In this video, I'm going to react to the top 10 NASCAR drivers to never win a cup race and also give my thoughts on yesterday's Toyota Owners 400. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. This is the place where I react to music, media, sports, anime, anything related to popular culture. I'll watch it with an open mind and give you my 100% honest reaction to it. And if you could please hit that like button early, I'd really appreciate it. First things first, huge congratulations to Alex Bowman for taking the victory despite starting, I think he was starting in position 24 on the grid. Massive congratulations to him. So from what I've heard, I think it was Alex's first win since the third race of last season. So you can't imagine how happy he must have felt taking that victory. It was honestly incredible. He passed it was I think Denny Hamlin with only like 10 laps to go of the race. You know, like he led, like he didn't lead for any other laps apart from those 10 laps which he eventually took the win on. So you can, he definitely grasped victory from the jaw of defeat for sure. Another great thing is that this was another surprise winner. I remember a few subscribers asked me who do I think was going to win, because last week I picked the winner correctly, and nobody, not me, not any of my subscribers, picked Alex Bowman. So it was another surprise winner. You know, for me, it's the reason why I started following NASCAR in the first place. The excitement, the unpredictableness of it, you know, compared to something like old Formula One where it's been quite predictable for the last few seasons. This season it's been, you know, very different, but for the last maybe 5 years it's been very predictable. NASCAR, you know, this is now the 8th winner in 9 different races. You know, I don't think anybody, if there's anyone out there who has correctly picked all 8 winners, massive pat on the back from me. I don't think there's somebody out there who has. But yeah, NASCAR, I'm loving the unpredictableness, you know, just how unexpected the winners are. It's really great. It does suck for Denny Hamlin though, who I think he led for 200 and something laps, so he led for over half the race, and I believe it was his home race as well. So you can imagine how desperate he was, you know, for that win. He was probably thinking, when he was leading all of those laps, he was probably thinking, yeah, I'm going to bring it home, but it just wasn't meant to be. Such is life. There were only, I think, 2 race related cautions, so it was quite an uneventful race from that point of view. But you know, again, huge congratulations to Alex Bowman. Well done, mate. Now this is going to be a fun video just because from what I've seen in NASCAR this season, maybe this isn't the norm, but it does seem that a lot of drivers get to pick up a win here and there, you know. So you would imagine that in a driver's career, let's say he has a 10-year racing career, he competes in, say, maybe, I don't know, 400 races, something like that. He might, you know, you would bet on him to pick up at least 1 win, right? So this video is going to be really enlightening just to show, you know, what kind of caliber driver, you know, competes in NASCAR for a lengthy period of time but doesn't manage to pick up 1 win. It might be for a variety of reasons. Maybe unfortunately they lost their life, maybe quite early in their career, maybe they raced for teams that, you know, couldn't put out competitive cars, who knows. But either way, it's going to be a really fun reaction. So let's go. This is going to be me reacting to the best 10 NASCAR drivers to never pick up a race win. Let's do it.
As of this past weekend, thanks to Alex Bowman, there are now 192 different winners in NASCAR's top division. And with Daytona coming up this weekend, that number could jump up to 193. But that got me to thinking, who's the best of the rest? Of the nearly 3,000 different drivers who cranked up their engines in the Cup Series and never won, which of those guys was the best?
3,000.
Well, let's take a look. In order to make this list, you need 2 things. 1, you have to be currently retired with no prospect of getting back into the Cup Series.
Right.
And 2, you have to have at least 50 starts. This weeds out some of the road course ringers who were no doubt very skilled in the Cup Series, but never competed full-time. We're looking at full-time competitors who focused on NASCAR's top division exclusively.
Right.
So without further ado, let's get into this.
Solid
Number 10,
criteria.
Ted Musgrave. Across 305 starts in the Cup Series, Ted Musgrave spent most of the early 90s driving for a variety of different teams, before he landed with Roush Racing in 1994. He would get a top 5 and 3 poles that season, but in 1995 it really looked like he was about to break out, getting a pole, 13 top 10s, and 7 top 5s. But that one win would elude him for his entire career.
Man.
In 1995, he even managed to have an average finish of 13th and placed 7th in the standings. The future looked bright for him, but he could just never make it happen. He would stick with Roush until 1998, and then he would jump ship. In 2001, he would drop down to the Truck Series, where he would find his greatest success. In just his first full-time season, he won 7 races and got 13 top 5s.
Well done, Ted.
And ended up second in the championship standings. From 2002 to 2004, he would get 3rd place in the championship standings 3 times in a row. And then in 2005, he finally put it all together and got a championship.
Well
Dropping
done.
down to the lower divisions ended up giving him his best success in his career, but it basically meant that he would never win that NASCAR Cup race. And so, here he sits in 10th on this list. At number 9, the most famous driver to never win a race in the Cup Series, Ralph Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt Sr. said he was the greatest driver he ever saw. But then again, it's his dad, so take that with a grain of salt. In just his first season in 1956, he won a pole position. He would make 51 starts in the top division, would nab 6 top 5s and 16 top 10s. He led 105 laps across 7,000 laps of competition, too. In 1956 as well, he won the Sportsman Championship in NASCAR, which was basically the precursor to the Busch Series, now the Xfinity Series.
Interesting.
He was also the track champion at my hometown track of Greenville-Pickens Speedway in 1965 and 1966. He came from an impoverished part of North Carolina and never really had that much money, so competing in the Cup Series was always just financially out of reach for him. Now, if he had the money or got scouted out by a good team, I have no doubt that he probably would have made hundreds of more starts and probably would have won a few races.
Yeah, you'd have
but with
to
his
bet on
financial
that.
situation, the Sportsman Series was basically going to be his home, and that's where he found his greatest success. Tragically, in 1973, his life was cut short at the age of 45 due to a heart attack.
Oh,
and considering that most drivers at the time would race all the way into their late 50s, we really don't know what he would have done later in life. Ralph Earnhardt will live on, however, as a legendary driver throughout the Southeast weekly racing scene. Number 8, Wally Dallenbach Jr. Wally Dallenbach didn't just never win a race in NASCAR's top division, he never won a race at any division.
Oh my God.
Despite driving for the likes of Felix Sabates and Rick Hendrick, he could just never nab that top spot.
Dang.
He was the 1985 and 86 Trans Am Series champion, and he had won the 24 Hours of Daytona 4 times and
Wow.
the 12 Hours of Sebring 3 times. There was no doubt about it, he was a master of sports car racing. However, he could just never wheel around those big, heavy, dumb NASCAR stock cars. While he was driving for Bud Moore, it looked like he had a race at Sonoma in the bag, but he just couldn't wrap that one up either. Across his career, he had 226 starts, 6 top 5s, and 23 top 10s. Not a terrible career by any stretch of the
Yeah, it's
imagination.
pretty good.
But he had had his chances, and by the time the 2000s came around, nobody wanted to sign him, except NBC Motorsports, where he became one of my favorite commentators. Success never found him in the track, but in the booth, there were few who could rival him. Number 7,
fair
Todd
play to him,
Bodine.
man.
Todd Bodine is the 2006 and 2010 Truck Series champion, and likely would have won the 2003 Busch Series championship had his team, Herzog Jackson Motorsports, not lost funding entirely. They went sponsorless for pretty much the whole season, and by the halfway point,
look
they
at
closed
that.
up shop. Despite that, though, he finished top 5 in the Busch Series standings 5 times. In the Cup Series, though, he had 241 starts, 7 top 5s, 21 top 10s, and 5 poles. And he did this while driving for garbage teams, by the way. He never had a quality ride in that division, ever. And if you want my opinion, I think he was far better than his older brother, Brett Bodine, who actually won a race, under dubious circumstances and a possible scoring error. I honestly think had he ever gotten a quality ride and gotten his sea legs
could have
under
done a
him,
lot
he
better.
probably could have made a good career as a NASCAR Cup Series competitor, and probably even won a few races. However, once he dropped down to the Truck Series and started winning so much in that division, you were going to be hard-pressed to get him out of that ride. And so, winless in the Cup Series he became. Number 6, Mike Skinner. Mike Skinner made a name for himself in the Truck Series when it began in the mid-90s. He'd win the inaugural championship and win 8 races that season. In 1996, he would win 8 races again. And in 1997, he
So
was brought in
he's
as the
did
second
well,
car
this
for
guy.
RCR and Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s teammate with Lowe's sponsorship. And in that first year of competition, he won the pole for the Daytona 500. Greatness surely awaited
Yeah,
Mike
that's what you
Skinner
would
in
have
the
thought.
Cup Series. And although he showed a lot of promise, he just could not perform at that level. He would have 10 top 5s, 39 top 10s, and would win 6 poles across his career. That just wasn't good enough to keep him in the ride, though. And by the time the 2001 season had wrapped up, they booted him out in favor of Robbie Gordon. He would drop back down to the Truck Series and would start winning again immediately. Although he doesn't compete in NASCAR anymore, he does compete in the Goodwood Festival of Speed, where he always impresses in the hill climb. Everybody laughs at that big, dumb, stupid NASCAR truck until it always goes to the top of the board. Yet Mike Skinner could definitely wheel a car around, and if he had ever changed teams or shaken things up a little bit instead of just dropping out entirely, he probably could have done pretty good in the Cup Series, maybe even gotten that first win. Number 5, Buddy Arrington. Buddy Arrington competed in the Cup Series from the mid-1960s all the way to the late 1980s, and he did this pretty much the entire time as an owner-driver. He had 560 starts, 15 top 5s, 103 top 10s, but only led 14 laps in his entire career.
Wow.
What was holding him back? Well, really just his unyielding loyalty to Chrysler Corp. For him, it was Mopar or no car. In 1978, Dodge debuted the Magnum, which Richard Petty absolutely hated and could not make work for the life of him, so he switched to Monte Carlos later that year. But Buddy Arrington, he stuck with the Magnum, for better or for worse, and it was definitely worse. In 1981, NASCAR switched to smaller, more compact bodies to more resemble production cars out on the street. Dodge introduced the Murata, and Chrysler introduced the Imperial, but they didn't have any factory backing. They had only introduced the bodies. Buddy Arrington stuck with the Murata and the Imperial for as long as he could, all the way until 1985 when the rules stipulated that he just couldn't run those body types anymore. And then he begrudgingly made the switch to Ford. Now, had he actually signed with a real team that had real backing, and wasn't so shackled to Chrysler when they had clearly backed out of the sport, he probably could have gotten at least one win. But hey, props where props are due. He wanted to drive Chrysler Corp cars, and by God, he drove Chrysler Corp cars. And speaking of owner-drivers, let's get to number 4 on our list, J.D. McDuffie. Most famous for being the guy who started the most races without ever winning a single one, J.D. McDuffie started 653 races in his career. He had 12 top 5s, 106 top 10s, and actually led a good number of laps across his career. Actually, the majority of his laps led came from a single race in Nashville in 1979. He led 111 laps that day, but ended up losing to Kel Yarborough, who had led 80 or so. It seemed like he had that race in the bag, but that one victory would just slip away. And in my research, I found out this little fun fact, which is so unbelievable I actually had to double check it to make sure it was right. But across those 653 starts, he never finished on the lead lap, ever. I'm pretty sure if I started 653 races, I could finish on the lead lap at least once by sheer accident. But J.D. McDuffie, again an owner-driver, always played it safe. No need to go out there and risk one of his precious few cars. And so, here he sits at 4th on this list. And starting with the top 3, we get to some pretty familiar names. Starting with 3rd on this list, Rick Mast. This one really surprised me in my research. I thought for sure Rick Mast had won a race in the Cup Series. I remember as a kid during the 90s, he always qualified well. He had 4 poles in his career, including the pole position at the inaugural Brickyard 400. He had 364 starts, 7 top 5s, and 36 top 10s. He also had 9 wins in the Xfinity Series during the late 80s. And oddly enough, his most iconic car, the Skull Classic number 1, was the biggest thing holding him back. Now you might have noticed that Harry Gant driving the number 33 Skull Bandit has basically the same sponsor as Rick Mast. And that's because the Jackson brothers, Leo and Richard, had split at some point. Richard Jackson started his own race team with the number 1, and Leo Jackson stuck it out with Harry Gant in the 33. Instead of unifying and coming together to make an unbeatable team, they had gone their separate ways and both of them suffered for it. Rick Mast would leave the team during the mid-90s, and after that, age had just caught up with him. He would retire in the early 2000s, solidifying his place on this list.
Collision.
Let's get to number 2 on this list, some NASCAR royalty. Probably the most famous NASCAR driver just by virtue of his name, Dick Trickle. Yeah, he has a hilariously unfortunate name, but hey, it made him famous.
Did you meet Dick Trickle?
I was trying to hold back there. I was trying to stop. I didn't want to do it. I don't even want to say it because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube.
What? He's a race car driver.
Unbelievable.
His name is Dick Trickle.
Is that his real name?
During the 70s and 80s, Dick Trickle was probably the most dangerous short track racer in America. By most estimates, he won between 1,000 and 2,000 short track features all across America, mostly in the Midwest. Before they became NASCAR legends, Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, and Alan Kawicki had to best Dick Trickle on Saturday night short tracks. Although he had made a few random starts in NASCAR's top division during the 70s and early 80s, he never started full-time in the series until 1989, filling in for an injured Bobby Allison. That year, he would end up being the Rookie of the Year at age 48.
Wow.
So why didn't he ever just step up to NASCAR competition earlier? Well, according to everybody that knew him and worked for him, he was making so much money by just dominating local short tracks that going up to the top tier series of NASCAR was never even really a consideration.
Wasn't worth it.
Financially, it would have been a step down for him. The big money sponsorship deals just weren't there yet. His Cup Series stats are this: 303 starts, 15 top 5s, and 36 top 10s. Oddly enough, his rookie year would be the best year of his career. Now, had he got starting earlier, say in his mid-20s or so,
definitely would
have won a race, in my opinion.
Definitely.
No question. It was just he was so busy dominating short tracks all over America and making so much money doing it that he just never bothered. By most people's estimates, he was probably the highest paid stock car driver in America for a long time. Yeah, who needs to move up to the big leagues when you're making twice as much money as they are?
That's
Gotta
it.
say, Dick, my hat's off to you. And for number 1 on this list, how about a guy you've probably never heard of? Cecil Gordon. Bearing no relationship to Jeff Gordon or Robbie Gordon, he had 449 starts in the Cup Series, 29 top 5 finishes, and 111 top 10 finishes. Every time he cranked up his engine, he had 1 in 4 odds of getting a top 10 that day. That's really impressive. Lots of guys today would kill for that kind of ratio. He finished top 10 in the points 7 different times, and he finished 3rd in the points twice, in 1971 and 1973.
So
Those
what
2 years
happened?
are very significant because 1971 is pre-modern era and 1973 is post-modern era. In the pre-modern era NASCAR, they were making routinely 40 to 60 starts in NASCAR's top division every year.
Wow.
That year, he showed up to 48 races, never won a single one, and still managed to be 3rd in the points, besting the likes of Buddy Baker,
That's
Elmo
crazy.
Langley, Bobby Allison,
Consistent.
and Benny Parsons. In 1973, post-modern era, there were only 28 races. That meant that even more drivers could make every single race, and so competition got even stiffer. Still, he managed to get 3rd place in the points. That year, he bested the likes of James Hilton, Richard Petty, Buddy Baker, Bobby Allison, Elmo Langley again, Buddy Arrington, and tons of other drivers.
So
that
some
year,
big
the only
names.
2 drivers that were better than him were Benny Parsons and Cale Yarborough. He was an owner driver pretty much his entire career, and what makes this even more insane is he only led 23 laps in his entire career.
Wow.
He wouldn't dominate, but he would always show up and always race well. And pretty much the only way to do better than Cecil Gordon in the points was to
win.
just go out and win.
Yeah.
And even then, if you won a few races that season, that still wasn't a guarantee. It's just staggering how few DNFs he had with as little money as he had and that little race shop he had out in North Carolina. I don't know what kind of voodoo they did to those engines to make sure they would always turn every single lap, but it must have worked. So yeah, there it is. Cecil Gordon, the greatest NASCAR driver who never won a race in the Cup Series. I'm Slapshoes. Y'all take it easy.
That was fascinating. Cecil Gordon, it's crazy how he did so consistently well. Like, he always finished his races, he always finished within the top 10 pretty much, but he just couldn't get that win. It's almost like he knew he was a quality driver, but maybe because he was an owner driver without much money, he didn't want to risk his car. He didn't want to risk causing any damage that he would have to obviously go into his pocket to repair. So that's probably what held him back. That was probably the bottleneck on his career, which is kind of sad if you think about it, because he didn't really allow himself to test his potential, I guess, to see how far he could go, because he probably would have won a race. Because if he's consistently finishing in the top 10, consistently finishing high in the points over the course of a season, you just got to really, and he's doing that so like all the time. Surely if he just, really tried to crank it, really tried to get that win, he'd have got it. But yeah, really fascinating video. Well done, Slapshoes, once again. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and keep throwing the recommendations my way. I know I say it all the time, but they genuinely help me out, because if I know you enjoy watching something, I'll definitely enjoy reacting to it. So like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, keep throwing the recommendations, and I'll catch you in the next one.